I think they're in a bit of a panic now because they absolutely need us to come in now, and we haven't done it yet. And I think that's scaring the crap out of them because I don't think they expected Iran to do so much damage so quickly, and they're just getting hit. And we're just seeing these reports: tens of thousands of Israelis fleeing by boat to Cyprus or crossing over into Egypt to get out. Do you think that they're shocked, that they're worried?
I think it would be very strange if they weren't. And they haven't ever seen anything like this. We're seeing real destruction. And I think just about like half an hour before this podcast, there was another major strike by Iran, I think the largest since the first couple of days, that did significant damage in several Israeli cities. If this it goes on, it's not that Israel can't survive, but Israel, again, I think the myth of invincibility is being ripped apart before our eyes. And that's something that is I don't think Israelis themselves really are going to be able to handle very well. And, I guess we're seeing it already with the people fleeing the country. We've always said that Netanyahu was going to do this one day, and that his plan was to bring the Americans in behind him. And that, clearly that and many, many other people were right about this. That's what's happening right before our eyes. And, maybe that was always I don't know if you want to say the plan B, plan A, or the preferred outcome is that we just, we decapitate the regime in this first strike, the Iranians rise up. And maybe there's some people in Israel and the U.S. who actually believe that would happen. But clearly the Israelis always had plan B, and that is, well, if that doesn't work out and we start getting pummeled, then the Americans will surely come in. And I think he's probably right about that. But I don't know if he really thought it through. I mean, it's sort of like you say, okay, we're going to go 15 rounds with this, or, we're going to have this boxing match. I'm going to use this analogy again. And, we'll get in the sucker punches first. Maybe we'll be able to knock him out right there in the first round. It doesn't worry, but he'll start beating on us. And that big guy in the crowd, he'll come out, that 800-pound guy, and because he won't stand for it. And he'll come in and then finish him off. So anyway, they're now, in the ring, and they're starting to get pummeled, and it's going on, day after day. And again, it was one of the worst pummelings occurred just, about an hour ago. I imagine that, I just wonder if the Israelis really have a stomach for it, if they kind of understand how painful this was going to be. Again, they're just kind of, I think, glancing out of the crowd and hoping that 800-pound guy is going to climb into the ring real soon, and he may. But they're worried about it. This is an interesting thing. It's like we're sure that Trump is going to do this. I think he is, but the Israelis themselves are not so sure. They think that Trump may be playing this game. That he might have just led. You would be happy to let Netanyahu just take the abuse, and may choose in the end not to become involved. I think they're wrong about that, but they have that fear. They have that fear. They have to be very anxious. It's like, okay, we're on plan B, but this is hurting. Round after round, and this other guy is landing a lot of punches on us.
Right. But the thing is, when the U.S. comes in, it's not like Israel gets to tap out. They're still going to be getting punched. They're still going to get pummeled. That's the problem. I don't know if they thought about that. I think they thought just like the U.S. is so powerful that they can just do it quick and easy. If we were able to do this in Syria, we can do the same thing in Iran, no problem. But I think they're going to find out that all of a sudden, we short of a ground invasion, we're not overthrowing this government, this country. And then you've lost. It's over.
Yeah. Well,
big trouble. Well, let me end with this question. It's just, we've been talking a lot about just, how this potentially will play out. But
right.
I want to take kind of a step back. And, when we started the conversation on Wednesday, you said you had a lot of anxiety. And I want to just say, Can you tell us about that anxiety? Like, should we be anxious, or are we really in danger here? How serious is this right now? Just big picture.
Okay. I don't see I can't say that's somewhere down the road that this doesn't become a possibility, but at the present, I don't see a chance of world war. I don't see World War III coming out of this. It's regional war, which is very, very bad for the region, right? It could very easily expand to the Gulf states, for example, and to American bases in Iraq very, very quickly. And the danger, I guess in the end, when I'm really anxious is those moments of pessimism, and I think about Syria. I mean, I was really depressed by the outcome in Syria because I used to look at that. Here's this one little plucky, you could call it a regime. I think that's fair, but or call it a government that held out. That was attacked by these very powerful forces. And with the help of the Russians, but it was the Syrians themselves that basically did it. With the help of the Russians and the Iranians, I should say, they did push them back, and they survived. And then the whole thing collapsed. And I just found this whole thing so depressing. It was just really put me in a funk for some days. And then there are moments where I think, oh no, is it going to be like Syria all over again? And there's always the possibility. We don't know. There's always that possibility. But yeah, there's just a general anxiety. I can't, we see all these possibilities, like maybe an American warship being sunk or massive attack on American bases. And how is America going to respond to that? How are we going to take that? The best scenario is that people rise up in anger against Trump. But that may not happen. There may be, at least temporarily, a rallying around the flag, and a push to go to hit Iran even harder. How is Israel going to react to if this war, which has only gone on for a week and has already done a lot of damage? We're talking about very important centers of within Israeli society and politics. There was the stock exchange, this scientific research center, military headquarters of different kinds. And just recently, there was a missile that struck right outside the Haifa branch of the Knesset. And, so these are landmarks of Israel. These are kind of symbols of Israeli government authority and Israeli power, and they're being damaged. And this is only after a week. And if this just goes on, how is Israel going to respond to this? And that's, as this goes on, I think that we may start, approaching the nuclear threshold. And I just hope it never comes to that. But it just, this is on a very, very scary course. It's just however you look at it. It's just there's not going to be, maybe by some miracle, we spoke about that survivor of the crash in India. By some miracle we can walk away from this relatively unscathed, but I don't think it's likely. It's just going to be bad whatever it happens. And we can, wherever I look, I just see. I see some terrible outcome, whether it's Iran plunging into chaos or it's, America doubling down and actually, maybe even going nuclear, whether it's, Israel actually, becoming desperate and again, possibly going nuclear, just however you look at it, it's we're in a very, very volatile, a very dangerous situation.
Yeah, the Samson option scares me. And people are becoming aware of it. People are openly talking about the nukes. I think you probably saw Matt Gaetz was saying like, hey, there is one country in the Middle East that has nukes that doesn't allow any inspections. Guess who it is? Yeah. How about we get a deal where we have a truly nuclear-free Middle East? Let Israel give up its nukes, open itself up for inspections. Do you think that would ever be possible? That we could get Israel to denuclearize?
No, not the Israel that exists now. It would have to just be a new Israel in a new world, and I just don't see that. Maybe by miracle of miracles, that new Israel will happen. There will be an awakening in Israel, but it's just right now it's just a pipe dream.
Yeah. So okay. So we have to stay anxious then that this might end. We'll monitor it, but that more that Israel suffers as this develops, we could be looking at the Samson option. People are going to start looking into it, and then
I think that's right. I mean, before
people are already looking into
it. Maybe I'm not saying that it will happen, but I think we're going to start approaching these thresholds. Let's just put it that way, and then the talk about it will become commonplace at some point. It'll be something that's there as part of the the general conversation on social media and even in the mainstream media at some point.
Right. Yeah. I think most people don't know about this, but I'm seeing it going around. People are like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And it doesn't help Israel in terms of its image on the global stage to know that they have this ultimate FU blackmail up their sleeve. Okay, Dad, is there anything else we want to talk about? I know we haven't touched on Ukraine and Russia, and I know that's continuing.
Yeah.
But just what's happening here in Iran, it just seems to be, this is the big story. I just think that,
I agree. I think we have to focus on it for now. And we'll get back to Russia and Ukraine. That continues to be a very, very important conflict. It hasn't slowed down. The Russians are pressing forward as before. There just hasn't been a dramatic change. Let's just put it that, some breakthrough. It's on the same trajectory that it was on before this war in the Middle East broke out.
Right. I mean, if war breaks out with the U.S. and Iran, Ukraine is going to crumble pretty quickly. And Russia is going to benefit greatly from this. When the Strait of Hormuz, people are talking about getting Russia's coffers full. This will definitely do it. So
that's
when
true.
you look at this is just
right. It doesn't make
suicidal.
Yeah. So maybe I've said there may be some geopolitical analysts who are. That's actually just a theory. I haven't really heard that, but you stop and think about it from a geopolitical point of view. It just doesn't make sense. Especially from the China hawk, or even for the Russia hawk point of view, and those are the dominant geopolitical, thinkers in our deep state.
We try so hard to try to think, why would we do this? Why would we do this? And it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you can't. It's just so hard to sell it to people. It's so crazy.
I think I think we make a mistake, many of us, and is to try to impose some sort of coherence on this or some rationality, and it really isn't. It doesn't make sense what we're doing. I don't think it makes sense even from the Israeli perspective. This is. I think we're finding that out, and this time it's really showing. It appears to really have bit off more than they can chew in this case.
It makes sense if you believe in the Epstein files. I mean, then it kind of makes sense how we got this far, that we have this country and these.
But I was saying, even from the Israeli perspective, it doesn't make sense.
It's just, we've talked about that this is suicidal, and it still surprises me because I'm sure you probably saw that video of was it Ben Gvir in the streets, and there's someone yelling, and he said, "Well, we didn't think they would have missiles that were this powerful, this capable," and so people are upset. And it's like, we saw True Promise too. You guys saw it. You guys knew that this would happen. They demonstrated their capability, and what did you do? You just still kept it going. It's like, it's not like.
Well, I think we're also seeing the consequence of Israeli and Western propaganda. And we know what happened in True Promise 1 and True Promise 2. I think we did get a very accurate assessment, and we can see that now. Clearly, Iran has very sophisticated missiles. We're just seeing it, and they did demonstrate that in those two demonstrative retaliations that they carried out. But if you were following mainstream media, or whether in the U.S. or in Israel, you wouldn't know that. These were just pathetic. It was laughable. The Israelis, demonstrated that they just have this awesome air defense, and basically the Iranians couldn't do anything. And again, we know that that's not true, but that claim was made again and again, and it seems to have persuaded a lot of people. And I think, what happens is sometimes again, governments become the victims of their own propaganda. It was just like, we have to maintain this aura of invincibility. So we work really hard, we get with military censorship and, all our connections to the media, we got to maintain it. When you really should have, with those first demonstrative strikes, you should have stopped and said, hey, wait a second. They could really hurt us. That's what they're showing us here. Let's think about this carefully.